I remember the day I met Lauren like it was yesterday. She was radiant, with a laugh that seemed to light up the world. I was just an ordinary guy, not particularly handsome, not particularly wealthy, but I was good at loving her. Or so I thought. I worked hard to give her everything: a stable home, a promising future, a life where she wouldn't have to worry about anything. But it turns out, sometimes even your best isn't enough. The cracks started small, almost invisible. A missed dinner here, a late night there. Lauren had taken a new job at a marketing firm, and she threw herself into it with gusto. She'd talk about her coworkers, mostly women, she'd assure me. But one name kept coming up: Jason. Jason says this, or Jason thinks that. I didn't think much of it at first. Why would I? We were married. We had promises, vows. But then the late nights became more frequent. Her phone seemed permanently glued to her hand. She started taking extra care with her appearance before work. Red flags waved like banners in a storm, but I didn't want to see them. I told myself I was imagining things. That's what love does, doesn't it? It blinds you, even as it stabs you in the gut. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon. Lauren had gone out with some friends for brunch. I was cleaning up around the house when her tablet buzzed on the counter. She'd forgotten to lock it. A message popped up. Jason, can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I stared at the words, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. I tapped on the screen, my hands trembling. The messages were all there, laid out like the evidence in a courtroom. Months of deception, lies, and her assurances that Jason was just a work buddy. They felt like poison in my veins now. When she came home that evening, the tablet was on the kitchen table, open to the damning messages. She froze in the doorway, her face draining of color as she saw it. Tom, she began, her voice quivering. I can explain. Explain, I said, my voice eerily calm. Go ahead, Lauren. Explain. Make it make sense. She stammered, fumbling for words. Finally, she settled on the one excuse I'd heard too many cheaters use on TV dramas. It was a mistake. A harmless mistake. Harmless. I laughed then, a bitter, humorless laugh that echoed through the kitchen. Harmless? You call months of betrayal harmless? You call sneaking around behind my back harmless? She tried to cry, to beg, to tell me it didn't mean anything. But her tears meant nothing to me now. They were as fake as her promises. That night, I told her to leave. I didn't want to see her face, didn't want to hear her voice. She left, taking only a hastily packed bag and her phone, the same phone she'd used to shatter my trust. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, staring at the walls, the silence of the house pressing down on me. Memories of our wedding day kept flashing through my mind. The way she'd looked in her dress, so beautiful, so full of promises she had no intention of keeping. And then an idea started to form. A dark, vengeful idea that gripped me like a vice. Lauren had left her wedding dress in our closet. She'd talked about preserving it, keeping it as a memento of our perfect day. It felt symbolic, almost poetic, that this dress, the embodiment of our vows, should play a role in what came next. I spent the next few days in a haze of calculated anger. I went to the store and bought a metal trash bin, some lighter fluid, and a box of matches. I set it all up in the backyard, the wedding dress folded neatly inside the bin. It was almost dark when I struck the match and watched the flame take hold. The fire consumed the fabric, the lace and satin curling into blackened ash. The smell was acrid, but to me, it was the scent of justice. When the dress was nothing but ashes, I gathered them into a small box. Then I sat down to write her a note. I wanted it to be chilling, something that would stay with her forever. Lauren, you called it a harmless mistake, but mistakes have consequences. Our marriage was supposed to mean something. You chose to burn it to the ground, so I did the same. No, don't come back, don't call. This chapter of your life is over. Tom. And I left the box of ashes and the note on the dining table. Then I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The next day, Lauren came by to pick up some of her things. She walked into the house, calling my name. When she reached the dining room and saw the box and the note, I heard her gasp. Then came the sobs. They were loud and guttural, the kind of crying that comes from deep inside. Part of me felt satisfaction. The other part felt numb. I didn't go to her. I stayed upstairs, listening as she cried and begged for another chance. Eventually, she left, slamming the door behind her. She didn't come back again. Nah. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I joined a gym, started volunteering at a local animal shelter, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I even started therapy, where I learned to process the betrayal without letting it define me. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again, or maybe even a better version of myself. Lauren, I heard through mutual friends, wasn't doing so well. Jason had dumped her shortly after everything came to light. Apparently, he wasn't interested in being with someone who could cheat so easily. She'd moved into a tiny apartment on the other side of town and was struggling to keep her life together. Part of me wanted to feel pity for her, but mostly, I felt relief. I was free. One day I ran into her at a coffee shop. She looked tired, worn down. She tried to strike up a conversation to apologize again, but I stopped her. "Lauren," I said, my voice steady, "I've moved on. You should too." And with that, I walked away, leaving her and all the pain she'd caused behind me. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure. You have to create it for yourself. Burning that dress, writing that note, it was my way of taking back control, of ending a chapter that had become a nightmare. And now, as I look to the future, I know one thing for sure. I'll never let anyone take my happiness away again.